Is this the future of our nation? If the state of Texas has anything to say about it, absolutely. I'm Dr. Steve, your Patriot Professor, and we're going to see how liberals are absolutely freaking out over Texas becoming the epicenter of the rise of Christian nationalism and why that rise may indeed take over the nation. So make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and let's dive right in. These were the scenes from a recent Freedom Sunday celebration at the First Baptist Church of Dallas. Pastored by Dr. Robert Jeffress, First Baptist Dallas is considered by many to be the epicenter of a rising Christian nationalism that's taking over the whole of the Lone Star State. But that is clearly not sitting well with the left-wing activists in the liberal media.
They want to take God out of the country. They want government to be God.
We are in a battle today between good and evil, but God is with us.
If you are a believer in the room, it is time to fight with your faith. It's time for us to fight the good fight of faith. I'm ready to fight like hell.
Oh my. That was just a taste of the Texas Republican Party convention last week. What made this year's conference stick out from years past was the GOP's alarming calls for spiritual warfare. It wasn't all fire and brimstone, by the way. There were some real policy proposals to vote on, such as requiring the Bible to be taught in public schools, the labeling of abortion as homicide, and likening gender-affirming treatment for children as, quote, child abuse.
A number of news outlets, as you can see, are sounding the alarm on the rise of Christian nationalism, particularly centered in Texas. Many point to the year 2009 as the year it all really began. That was the year that activists took over the state's education board and pushed through new curriculum standards that enshrined Christianity at the center of America's founding. That was back in 2009, and many see that as the year Christian nationalism took an official foothold in Texas politics. One of the advisors for that new curriculum was Texas-based Christian historian David Barton, whose wall builders and pro-family legislative network have exercised an inordinate influence in shaping the worldview of Texas politics into a far more consistently Christian conservative worldview, a worldview reflected in Texas's public school textbooks. But what appears to have really made Christian nationalism so potent in Texas is the influence of mega Texas billionaires such as Dan and Ferris Wilks, often referred to as the Koch brothers of the Christian right, who have helped fund and establish Christian nationalism in Texas politics. So much so that Christian nationalism has now basically become synonymous with the Texas Republican Party, which has a solid control over all three branches of Texas government. According to reports, the Texas Republican Party is slowly but surely dismantling the separation between church and state, taking an incremental approach, such as passing bills that fund chaplains to serve as public school counselors, bills that will require the Ten Commandments displayed in all public schools and the motto, "In God We Trust," in all public spaces. What's so key here is that with the passage of every one of these successful legislations, the wall between church and state crumbles more and more, eventually ending up like the Berlin Wall. So what's really happening here? I mean, the legacy media wants to blame this on some sinister plot of religious fundamentalists trying to overthrow our nation. And so they become actually, frankly, rather lazy in assessing what's really happening in Texas. Well, as it turns out, what's happening in Texas is actually something that's happening all over the world, such that Texas is actually not the exception, it's the rule. And I'm going to show you exactly how. Hey, gang, you need to stop putting off what you know you need to do, and that is click on that link below and secure the deed to your home once and for all. Just bite the bullet. That's all you got to do to protect your most valuable asset, which is your home. The deed to your home is the only document that proves you own it, but the problem is that the deeds to all our homes are now online, and criminals are free to find your deed, forge your signature, refile as the new owner of your home, take out tons of loans using your home's equity, and then stick you with all the debt. But that's where our good friends over at Home Title Lock come in. Gang, they're amazing. You see them everywhere, right? They're incredible. Home Title Lock gives you the peace of mind that the deed to your home is absolutely, completely protected 24/7. Just click on that link below and use promo code TurleyTalks, and all you got to do is enter your address for your no-obligation home title scan to see if you've already been a victim of deed theft. It's a $100 value, absolutely, totally free with my promo code TurleyTalks. Gang, don't wait for the worst to happen only to regret you didn't do something about it. Do what I've done. Do what countless patriots have done. Click on that link below and secure your home today. Scholars are more and more recognizing that religion and nationalism are two of the most potent forces rising up in our world today. Back in 2003, scholars were recognizing that with the breakdown and collapse of communism, we've been witnessing a worldwide and often parallel revival of two major forces, nationalism and religion. The disintegration of the Soviet Union and the end of the Cold War provided the geopolitical and historical context for the crisis of Marxism, which created a massive ideological vacuum for both Russia and the former Soviet blocs. And that vacuum has increasingly been filled with the rise of nationalism on the one hand and religion on the other. And what more and more scholars are finding is that they actually tend to play off of one another. You see, we have to remember that in many respects, communism was largely destroyed by a re-emergent Christianity, namely the resurgence particularly of the Polish Roman Catholic Church and the ascendance of John Paul II, who worked together with Reagan and Thatcher to completely undermine any remaining moral foundations of communism. It's so interesting because Stalin was famous for asking the question, how many divisions does the Pope have? Basically mocking the Vatican in terms of its geopolitical power. But those words would certainly come back to haunt the Soviet Politburo, in that it was precisely the Roman Catholic Church under the guise of John Paul II that had an inordinate influence in destroying the Soviet Union and consigning it to the ash heap of history. What we're seeing today, particularly here in the United States with the resurgence of what's called Christian nationalism, is something very comparable in a manner similar to what Pope John Paul II did with communism. Today's Christian leaders are taking on secular liberalism here in the United States and in Europe. Again, a number of scholars are noting that the resurgence of Christianity, particularly in the West, is putting the secular state under siege. The triumph of Trump here in the States and the rise of the so-called far right in Europe is seen as a clear triumph of nationalism over liberal globalism, but it's also being fueled by a rising Christian civilizationalism. All throughout the West, particularly in Europe, Christianity is once again returning to the public square. Even in the most secularized parts of Europe, like Sweden and the Netherlands, Christianity is reemerging as the preeminent principle for the recovery of a distinctively European culture and politics. And that preeminence, even in the most secularized parts of Europe, is once again placing Christianity and Christian identity right smack in the middle of the public square. And so ironically, what's happening in Texas is actually par for the course of what's happening all over the world. Religion and nationalism are surging, which means that what's happening in Texas may be a glimpse of the future of our nation as a whole.